Councilmember Mitch Brown, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, Council is pleased to be joined by Pastor Vince. Pastor, welcome to Council.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your diligence, for your foresight. Dear God, we ask that you be with all of those who are scheduled to participate in this meeting tonight, dear God. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you be with all of our legislative officials, dear God, locally, statewide, and nationally, dear God. Allow them to work in the best interest of the people. Be with those who have been affected by the pandemic, dear God. I ask that you maintain a sense of safety for those who haven't been affected, dear God, but be with those who are mourning right now in the midst of everything that is going on in our world abroad, dear God. I ask that you be with those working on the front lines, the nurses, the doctors, the janitors, the people that are working in hospitals and fast food restaurants and stores, retail all over this land, dear God. I ask that you be with our armed men and women who are serving in our military, Heavenly Father. I ask, dear God, that you just be with us. Allow this meeting to be conducted in a manner that showcases open minds and pure hearts, dear God. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Minister Ford. Minister Ford is a senior minister at Church of Christ in Genesee Avenue. Thank you so much for praying with us this evening. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of city council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This week's communications received by the city's clerk's office are listed on the agenda and will be published into the bulletin. Are there any other pieces to be read into the record?
Yes, President Harden, members of council, we have letter addressed to the city clerk from the Franklin County Board of Elections dated June 30th, 2020, stating the following. On behalf of the Franklin County Board of Elections, I hereby certify that the board has examined the part petitions for initiated charter amendment community bill of rights received by our office from you on June 23rd, 2020. The numbers of valid and invalid signatures on the part petitions for the prospective initiative are as follows. Total signatures 8,911, valid signatures 6,420, percentage of valid signatures submitted relative to the number of total raw signatures 72%. The total number of voters electors that participated in the 2019 general municipal election was 98,698. The number of electors who represent 10% of the total electors is 9,870. Please let us know if we may assist further. Jeff Mackey, Manager of Petitions and Campaign Finance. In addition to the communication from the Board of Elections, the City Clerk has forwarded two members of City Council, City Attorney Klein's memorandum dated June 22nd, 2020, regarding legal sufficiency of the same initiative petition as required by Section 42-9 of the City Charter, which states the City Clerk shall, upon receipt, forthwith forward to the Council the Elections Authority's report regarding signature validation and the City Attorney's findings regarding legal sufficiency.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and we will consider that later this in this meeting during Rules and Reference Committee. As I've been at the beginning of each council meeting, I'd like to quickly go over how many of our neighbors that we've lost due to COVID in the last week. I think that it's important to do this so that we remember that this virus is here. This virus sometimes can be you can't see it, invisible, but it is here. And so as of today, we've lost 344 Columbus residents due to COVID-19. and that's 33 more deaths than we had this time last week when we met. We also know that we've seen a spike in Columbus of new COVID cases, meaning that we are going to lose more of our neighbors unless we act, and we act. And that's why I am happy that this council will be considering a mandatory mask legislation later this evening to continue to protect our residents. And with that, I would like to ask our Health Commissioner Ashika Roberts, to speak just about where we are and what we're seeing as it pertains to COVID in our community. Oh, Dr. Roberts, you're unmuted, then it muted back again.
Can you hear
There.
me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council President Harden and members of Council. Thanks for having me here this evening with you. Yes, you are sharing some very sobering news for us about the loss of life that we've had right here in our community from COVID-19. And you're absolutely correct. This is a silent virus that most of us, unless we have a family or friend who's been touched by this virus, have not seen and don't understand the impact this virus can have on one's health. We continue to see an increase here in Columbus. Since March 13th, we've had 8,317 individuals right here in our jurisdiction who've been diagnosed with COVID-19. And we continue to see that. Over the last 10 plus days, it's actually been 12 days now, our daily average has been over 100 new cases per day. One day in particular, we had 229 new cases presented in one day. Imagine that I have a staff that have to interview all 229 of those individuals. So that is definitely an undertaking by my team to do that work. But it's important work because we need to understand this disease. We need to understand where those people were and who they might have exposed. So it's all a part of protecting everyone to do that interview, identify their close contacts, get those close contacts quarantined and or tested if need be, and making sure that they don't spread the virus on to others in our community. The mask ordinance that you're going to be discussing and hopefully passing this evening is very important for our community to help us reduce the spread of this virus right here in our community. We don't have a lot of options for this virus to treat this virus. Our interventions are limited, but they're all something that we as individuals can do to help slow the spread of this virus in our community. So the first one is to put on your mask. As Dr. Acton used to always say, don your cape and don your mask. And it's really important that we all put our mask on. It doesn't matter if you're having symptoms or not. Masks have been proven to be very effective in reducing the spread of this virus among individuals who are symptomatic as well as those who are pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic. You could be a carrier of the virus but not exhibiting any symptoms, but you could spread it to someone else who could present symptoms. And that person could be your grandmother. It could be your aunt who's going through chemotherapy for breast cancer. It could be your nephew who's got really severe asthma. So it's really important that we all wear our masks whenever we're around other people and can't guarantee that there's going to be that 6 feet of spacing that we all recommend. So the other thing we can do besides putting that mask on is we can keep that 6 feet spacing. And then we can also wash our hands. So there's 3 tools that we have that we can use pretty regularly, and that's wear a mask, wash your hands, and maintain that 6 feet of spacing. And of course, if you're sick, if you're having any symptoms whatsoever, you should stay home. You should not go out in public and expose yourself to others until you know for sure what that illness is that you have, what symptoms you have, and make sure that it's not COVID-19. Our community does have free COVID-19 testing now, Monday through Friday, right here at Columbus Public Health. All you have to do is call 645-1519. Again, that's 645-1519. Or check out our website, which is coronavirus.columbus.gov. Happy to answer any questions. And if people do need assistance getting a mask, all they need to do is call 311.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. And we know a lot of folks, if folks were a little lax this weekend during the holiday weekend and were with a group of more than 10, even if they were their family, would you recommend them take any action? What would be your recommendation for folks who may have been around more than 10 people this weekend?
So again, testing is available and you don't have to have symptoms, but we strongly discourage people from doing serial testing. So just testing just because you want to get tested. If you think you've been exposed to someone who has COVID-19, or were involved in some, potentially risky activities because you were in a large group, we do recommend testing, but ideally you should be tested approximately 5 days from that exposure. That's when the virus is most likely to peak and be detected when we do the test on you. And again, we don't recommend serial testing. So if we test you 5 days after exposure, then that's your test, and you wouldn't get tested again unless you exhibited symptoms. Then we would recommend you get tested again. So yes, if you were at a backyard barbecue or doing some other activities where you were around people that weren't your typical household contacts, testing could be recommended if you think it was a risky behavior, if you weren't wearing your mask, if other people weren't wearing their mask. But again, I would wait to at least 5 days after that exposure before getting tested.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Let me check and make sure. Any council members have any questions for the health commissioner while we have her? Seeing none, we're very grateful. Please pass along our appreciation to your frontline workers, those who are doing the contact tracing. When we see a spike, we have to remember that it actually affects other people's lives as well. So we all have to take that into consideration when we ask folks to do the things like wear a mask and socially distant, that it affects so many more people. Thank you, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you.
Are there any resolutions or announcements by council members, starting with President Pro Tem?
No, thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mitch Brown.
Nothing this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember. Councilmember Dorns.
Thank you, Council President Harden. A couple announcements tonight. Wanted to invite Director William Scott from the Department of Neighborhoods to give a brief update on our area commission meeting virtually, as the mayor has addressed this in a recent executive order. Director William Scott.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorns and President Harden, and thank you for allowing me to share this information with you this evening. Last week, the mayor signed Executive Order 707-2020, and this executive order permits area commissions to suspend their election process and allows for an extension of area commissioner terms that would have normally expired June 1, 2020 through December 1, 2020. The City of Columbus, as you know, relies on the work of our area commissions to provide input, to serve public forums, and make recommendations to city regarding city business. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and consequent restrictions, some of our area commissions are unable to hold in-person elections and or collect needed petition signatures required by their bylaws. This extension will enable area commissioners to continue serving beyond their previously determined term expiration date to ensure that the area commissions can continue to operate effectively and with quorum. All area commission terms expiring during this time are automatically extended through no later than December 31st, 2020. Should an area commission implement an alternative election process or choose to hold in-person elections prior to December 31st, 2020, individuals elected will be appointed for their full 3-year term. If area commissioners have questions, they are encouraged to work with their neighborhood liaisons to identify an appropriate election process for each commission area by the end of the year. And thank you again for allowing me to share this information.
Thank you, Director William Scott. I also just want to say thank you to all the area commissions in the city who have really done a great job of shifting their work virtually. It's the first time they've ever been asked to do something like this. And I think for the most part, and I think Director William Scott would agree that folks have enthusiastically continued to do what we always ask of them, which is serve their community in another way. So just want to say thank you to the commissioners that have continued to do that work even under difficult circumstances. I also want to remind folks that tomorrow the Public Utilities Committee will be hosting a joint public hearing with the Environment Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Remy, on the topic of utility aggregation. So it'll happen tomorrow, July 7th, virtually at 5 p.m. Representatives from Traybell LLC and other organizations will attend the hearing to discuss the city's efforts related to provide competitive retail energy supply costs for Columbus citizens and support renewable energy development, especially local renewable energy generation, to advance Columbus's sustainable economy. and to ensure that suppliers provide quality, reliable service and first-rate customer service to folks in our community. This hearing will be available to live stream on CTV and broadcast on Spectrum Channel 1024, WOW Channel 3, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. The video will also be posted on the City of Columbus YouTube channel following the event. Folks are welcome to reach out to my legislative aide, Kevin McCain, at kbmccain, M-C-C-A-I-N, at columbus.gov, or visit my Facebook page and Communications from Council for more details on how they can participate in this important hearing. Thank you, President Hardin, and that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Favor.
Thank you, Council President Hardin. Just an announcement, next Monday, July 13th at 5 p.m., I will be hosting a hearing of the Criminal Justice Committee to address hate group affiliation legislation. Members of the public who are interested in providing written or oral testimony should email Charles Newman at CENEWMAN@columbus.gov by July 13th at 3 p.m. with the subject line, Testimony for July 13th Hearing. Please reach out to my office with any additional questions. Thank you, Council President Hardin. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Remy.
Other than just saying, I'm looking forward to joining Councilmember Dorans tomorrow for our aggregation hearing. Appreciate the work that his office put into that. And if anybody needs to contact my office, reach my aide, Jeff Carter, at jdcarter@columbus.gov in regards to aggregation. So looking forward to the hearing tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And last but certainly not least, Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, President Hardin. I don't have anything this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there any comments by our other elected officials that have joined us from the City Attorney's Office, City Auditor?
None tonight, sir.
Welcome, Madam Auditor. Or the courts. I'm not sure I see anyone from the courts right now. Are there any requests by members of council for the removal of an ordinance on a resolution or the consent action portion of the agenda? Saying none, may we now have the motion to waive reading of the titles of 30-day legislation by the city clerk?
So moved.
Second. There's a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Hardin.
Will the clerk now read into the record the ordinance numbers of 30-day legislation on tonight's agenda for first reading?
Finance Committee, Ordinance 1521-2020, Public Utilities Committee, Resolution 76X-2020, Ordinances 330, 332, 949, 1423, 1429, 1448, 1459, 1468, 1469, 1471, 1473, 1483, 1489, 1508, 1510, 1516-2020, Public Service and Transportation Committee Ordinances 1426 and 1455-2020, Economic Development Committee Ordinances 1561, 1569, and 1641-2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We had one written testimony received in advance from Commissioner Stephanie Coe against Ordinance 1426-2020. The following ordinance appear on our agenda as consent action. Will the clerk now read those numbers into the record?
Finance Committee Ordinances 1376, 1476, 1478, 1505, 1515, 1524, 1530, 1544, and 1559-2020. Recreation and Parks Committee Ordinance 1317 and 1328-2020. Public Utilities Committee Resolution 88X-2020. Ordinances 857, 1299, 1332, 1343, 1357, 1365, 1367, 1377, 1463, and 1519-2020. Neighborhoods Committee Ordinance 1477, 1513, and 1560-2020. Technology Committee Ordinances 1360 and 1520-2020. Public Service and Transportation Committee Ordinance 1151, 1371, 1399, 1414, and 1452-2020. Housing Committee Ordinances 1499, 1535, 1541, 1556-2020. Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee Ordinances 1136 and 1472-2020. Economic Development Committee, ordinances 1431, 1442, 1497, 1528, 1529, 1539-2020. Administration Committee, ordinances 1522 and 1523-2020. Health and Human Services Committee, ordinances 1465, 1481, 1509-2020, and appointments from the mayor's office numbered A0065, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, and 81-2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one speaker joining us via WebEx, and that is Judge Angela Mingo. Speaking in favor of Ordinance 1477, is Judge Mingo with us this evening?
Good evening, Council President Harden.
Welcome to Council.
Members of Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of Ordinance 1477-2020. My name is Angela Mingo, and I serve as the Director of Community Relations at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Nationwide Children's is proud to partner with the Department of Neighborhoods and the City of Columbus in implementing the vision of the One Linden Plan. Our public-private partnership promotes improvements to existing housing stock in Linden. We know that safe, decent, affordable housing is essential to the health and wellness of children and families. Today's legislation builds upon the scope of the 614 for Linden Collaborative and enables families to receive the improvements necessary to safely stay in their homes. The Healthy Homes program will oversee this work. Healthy Homes is the affordable housing arm of Nationwide Children's Hospital and Community Development for All People. The program is part of the Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Families initiative and provides exterior home repair services to qualifying Linden families earning up to 65% of area median income. That equates to a family of four earning just under $55,000 a year. Eligible home improvements include repair and/or replacement of roofs, siding, and windows. Nationwide Children's Hospital has served the children in Linden for more than 25 years. Through our primary care center, we have provided healthcare services to more than 115,000 patients. Our services extend to our school-based clinics at both Linden McKinley High School and KIPP Columbus. We understand the intersection of health and housing and know that if we truly want to improve the health of children, we must improve their built environment. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Mingo. There are so many Mingos in service and public service. I called you Judge. I apologize for that. Thank you though so much for the support of Nationwide and the work in the partnership with the city on this really important.
Thank you again for your support.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any questions or concerns with the consent portion of the agenda and my council members? If not, may I have a motion for approval of these items as designated as consent?
So moved. Second.
Please, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Ordinances are passed. We will now proceed with the second reading of 30-day legislation. The first committee to come before council is the Recreation and Parks Committee. Thank you, Councilmember. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I have one ordinance in Recreation and Parks tonight. It is Ordinance 1329-2020 to authorize the Director of Recreation and Parks to enter into contract with Play World Mid-States for the 2020 CDBG Playground Improvements Phase 2 project, to authorize the appropriation of $785,000 within the CDBG fund and in accordance with the 2020 Annual Action Plan as approved by Council, to authorize an expenditure of $785,000 from the CDBG fund and to declare an emergency. Phase 2 of the Playground Improvement Project will replace 5 playgrounds at the Far East Community Center, Dodge, Mock, NAFSCAR, and Northeast Parks. All of the playgrounds are more than 20 years old and will be replaced with new equipment that exceeds current accessibility standards. Improved drainage will also be installed to prevent flooding issues. The funding comes from Community Development Block Grant dollars, or CDBG, in accordance with the 2020 Annual Action Plan. We also recently approved Phase 1 and Phase 3 of the Playground Improvement Project, which includes the replacement or installation of new playgrounds at East Haven, Mamie Moore, Cooper, Riverside Green, Indianola and 8th, Northeast, Big Walnut, and Driving Parks, as well as Howard Community Center and the retreat at Turnberry Shelter House. So we are making a lot of improvements to our playgrounds to help ensure safe outdoor activities for kids across Columbus. Emergency action is being considered so that construction can begin this summer. I would also like to note that because playgrounds are open again in the city of Columbus, we just want to encourage our families who are utilizing them and our children who are utilizing them to please continue to do so in a smart way. I will tell you, playgrounds are a big part of weekly life for my children and me. We bring our hand sanitizer. I follow my kids around with it. They're 4 and 2, so I got to catch them before they touch their nose or something after they've been down the slide. And we wash our hands as soon as we get home. If we go to a playground and it's too crowded and we can't keep a safe, my rule for my kids is 10 feet because they're so little, and we can't keep a safe distance of 10 feet from other children, then we leave. And they know that's the deal going in. And so they typically do so without fighting or whining. But just a reminder to folks, as you're utilizing our playgrounds, we want families to have this option. We're glad that they do, but please do so again in a smart way as we navigate this very serious global pandemic right here in Columbus. With that, are there any questions or comments from colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Ordinance is passed.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have in Recreation and Parks or any of my committees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next committee to come before Council is the Public Safety Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Mitch Brown. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight I have ordinance 1017-2020 to authorize the Finance and Management Director on behalf of the Fleet Management Division to establish purchase orders with PAR public safety equipment from previously established universal term contracts for the purchase of parts and services related to the upfitting of various vehicles for the use by public safety, and to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of $1,052,707.87 from the Special Income Tax Fund. This ordinance authorizes the Department of Finance and Fleet Management Division to enter into a contract for parts and services that were used to upfit the previously purchased vehicles for the Division of Police and the Division of Fire. In total, this will prepare 68 vehicles for service. I'd like to ask Deputy Finance Director Dan Giancardella to comment on this legislation.
Thank you, President Harden, Safety Chair Brown, members of council. As the Safety Chair Mitchell Brown mentioned, this is a companion piece to upfit 68 vehicles for public safety. These vehicles were legislated at the end of February, approved by this council. This upfit is a little over $1 million, about approximately $1,050,000 to upfit these vehicles. This is a process we have used for a number of years. It's proved to be very efficient. We purchase the vehicles typically from a statewide contract, and then we have a universal term contract with PAR that was bid for upfitting a lot of the add-on equipment to make them frontline cruisers. That equipment would be things like the light bars, the dash cameras, computers, radio systems, those things that we typically would buy separate and then install. And then there's a variety of things that PAR also supplies that goes into all these vehicles, like fire extinguishers, some communications antennas, push bumpers, protective seating, and other related equipment, again, to make those full frontline police cruisers. Otherwise, these vehicles look pretty much like what you would largely see if you were to go to a Ford dealer. It's basically a Ford Explorer that is produced separately for police agencies. There are 51 patrol cruisers that would be upfitted, 6 freeway cruisers, 2 sergeant vehicles, 5 for K9, 3 transport, and then 1 fire battalion chief vehicle. Again, this is pretty much the way that we have upfitted these for the past several years. If council would choose not to approve this ordinance this evening, that would basically mean we would have vehicles that, at least for the time being, we would not be able to upfit and put on the street, which would likely force us to have, for police to have vehicles on the street longer, which is going to increase maintenance cost for the fleet management division, ultimately for the city. As Chair Brown mentioned, Kelly Regan, the fleet administrator, is also on the line and available to answer any questions you might have. I appreciate council's consideration of this ordinance this evening, and I also would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
If I may, Kelly Regan, who is the fleet management director. Kelly, can you also address the issue of how we address replacement of vehicles?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Director Brown. Thank you, President Harden, and thank you for having me. We have a replacement schedule that basically is miles and maintenance. And once a vehicle exceeds so many miles and maintenance, then we replace that vehicle. And typically, it easily hits that within a 5-year time frame. And within 5 years, we need to be replacing that vehicle. So all of the vehicles that have been mentioned this evening are, most all of them are for replacement of other vehicles that are beyond their useful life. Does that answer your question, Director?
Thank you, Kelly. Also, when these vehicles are sold, are the funds returned to the general fund budget or to the department budgets?
That's a great question, Director. Those funds, when the vehicles are sold, they're disposed of online, and we sell them online through our universal term contract that is for selling all vehicles online and all equipment online. And all of those funds go into the general permanent improvement fund. So, and I think that's a general fund, agency fund, but that Director Giangardella would know more about that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yes.
Tonight, I have 2 speaker slips, Council President, a Tyler Clemente. I don't know if he's on WebEx or if he's in person.
Chair, it says that Tyler should be joining us via WebEx, so Miss Angie would be opening him up for us.
At this particular time, we'd like to have our speakers address the issue.
Okay, I do not show Tyler.
Acknowledging that, we have Anisha Awad also has submitted speaker slip.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Let me state you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and any organization which you may be associated with.
Okay, my name is Anissa Awad, and I am representing the larger Columbus public and also the People's Budget Columbus. And we were just here to say that generally no explanation like by anyone here can really explain away the fact that these cop cars are being used in 5 years. That kind of just shows us how much patrolling is being done in neighborhoods that we know are disproportionately affected by police patrolling. And also just over $1 million, almost $2 million, is an excessive amount of money to be asking for in such a time of crisis in relation to police brutality and disproportionate judgment and treatment, especially in our neighborhoods of color and especially in our communities of color. So the People's Budget of Columbus and the people that we represent, as well as myself individually, hope that everyone here at City Council can reject this ordinance, and in doing so, showing the public that you are actively working on rebuilding the trust that City Council and the General Division of Safety have lost from the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Owa, for your commentary. At this time, is there any comments from my colleagues? Seeing none or hearing none, I move to take this ordinance from table.
Second.
And I now move for passage and ask for a voice vote.
Sorry, I didn't call the roll. I apologize. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans.
By voice.
By voice for that as well. Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Faber?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes. Remove from the table.
I now move for passage with a voice vote.
Thank you, Chair. And I just would like to remind all residents who are watching that we are in the middle of reimagining public safety in our community. And so these are individual ordinances. As we move through, we're having hearings on and we'll be voting on 4 very important pieces of legislation before we leave for break at the end of this month. And then under the leadership of our finance director and chair of safety, we'll have a broader conversation around what does public safety mean to Columbus and what that actually means to the budget and how we move forward. But we're going to go ahead and call the roll by voice.
We second it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Faber?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance passed.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to move to ordinance 1269, 2020, to authorize the Director of Finance and Management to enter a contract with Aero Computers in accordance with the provisions of sole source procurement to purchase a mapping system, keyboard kits, and accessories for the Division of Police, to authorize an expenditure of $123,845 from the General Government Grant Fund and to declare an emergency. I have at this particular time Deputy Director of Public Safety George Speaks available. George, would you please speak to this sole source of this legislation, please?
Thank you, President Harden, Councilmember Brown, and members of council. This ordinance is utilizing federal grant funds to simply purchase a GIS system to be utilized in our helicopters. The GIS system shows the street names in exquisite detail, which will enhance the pilot's ability when responding to an emergency.
Director, can you speak to the how the unit improves public safety?
Councilmember Brown, helicopters play a significant role in the public safety of our city and due to mutual aid throughout all of Central Ohio. On average, over the past 10 years, the helicopters are the first law enforcement unit on scene 4,630 times a year. Moreover, they arrive on scene in an average of only 1 minute and 12 seconds in our city, which is approximately 225 square miles now. This rapid response is annually responsible for 109 misdemeanor arrests, 179 felony arrests, and on average, the helicopters are used to find 21 missing persons a year. I also believe that the helicopters help to de-escalate scenes, as both the officer and suspect know they're being watched and recorded from above.
Director Speaks, can you clarify the issue with regards to misdemeanor involvement of our helicopter?
Well, the stats I just cited, 109 misdemeanor arrests a year, 179 felony. These stats are looking back with 2020 hindsight. At the time of the initial emergency call, one doesn't generally know whether a response will ultimately be classified as a felony or a misdemeanor. Let me give you an example. Take a shots fired call. If it's later determined that the suspect simply fired the weapon into the ground, or they were brandishing it in a menacing way, that's likely to be a misdemeanor. On the other hand, if the suspect fired the weapon at a residence or at a person, then that's a felony. Again, this determination is not made at the initial call, it's simply shots fired. The misdemeanor felony is sorted out afterwards, not at the time of the initial emergency call. Now, having said that, let me talk a little further about misdemeanors. First, there are violent misdemeanors. For example, last year, our helicopter caused the arrest of at least 25 violent misdemeanors. Charges such as domestic violence, or assault, or aggravated menacing. Likewise, misdemeanor situations can prevent very dangerous situations. For example, last year, there were at least 33 non-violent misdemeanor arrests for crimes such as OMVI. There were at least 10 pursuits, and the helicopters are able to manage a pursuit much more safely so that to lessen the potential of crashes either by the suspect or responding emergency vehicles. There were at least 7 hip skip misdemeanors, and I do recall a public indecency around children. Again, you don't know initially whether it's going to result in a felony or misdemeanor. That's usually developed after the facts are sorted out.
Director, can you also speak to how our helicopter unit responds to other Central Ohio jurisdictions in accordance with mutual aid agreements?
Sure. So when available, our helicopters do assist other law enforcement jurisdictions when called upon. I might add that likewise, those jurisdictions will come to our aid when they're available with other resources. I know that these helicopters are greatly appreciated by other jurisdictions. And lastly, I would note that through the years, we have greatly relied on federal grants to help offset the cost of the helicopters. The ordinance before you tonight is a good example of that. And many times there's a federal requirement that when you accept these grants, that you agree to give mutual aid to other jurisdictions in need.
And also, Director, would you speak to the issue of the resale value of helicopters, given the fact that there have been comments about us having 6 helicopters, why that is a reasonable number for the type of work that we do, and subsequently the impact on resale?
Well, I believe Chief Woods last week erroneously stated 6. When he was at the helicopter unit, we did have more helicopters. We have cut that down to 5. So the 5 helicopters, basically the plan is that every 10 years, you're going to replace and buy a new helicopter. So every 2 years, our plan is to try to purchase a new. We just switched our vendor, which will save the city substantial monies over the next 10 years compared to our prior vendor. That purchase was around, if memory serves, $3.5 million. 10 years from now, we would sell that copter. Because of the rotation of these 5 copters every 2 years, the resale value is quite high. That money is put back into the fund so that we're able to purchase additional helicopters. Likewise, I would note that we're a major metropolitan area. We strive for safety of these copters. They are flying over, 1 million people. So we want to ensure that there are not too many hours put on those engines.
And also, Director Speaks, could you speak to the equipment that's authorized in this purchase order to be utilized by our helicopter unit as an example, the FLIR system, forward-looking infrared, and the value associated with it?
Well, again, it's very sophisticated equipment. This equipment will show the exact pinpoint locations of the response at the scene so that the pilot is able to direct ground resources to the emergency call. But there are many, that's one example of the sophisticated equipment. For example, the best use that I can cite you is our infrared equipment. We have been called time and time again through the years to help find missing people. It's especially helpful at night. For example, I recall a toddler who somehow got out of the house at an apartment complex with many retaining ponds. We were able to find him without that toddler drowning, which was a concern. I recall an elderly individual with dementia at a nursing home who was somehow able to leave the nursing home in the middle of winter. He had very little clothes. The helicopter had a very quick response and again was able to use that technology to find that individual, and both of those individuals were alive. That's the great advantage of the copter.
Thank you. Tonight, I also have a speaker slip. If I may, again, I'm not certain whether they're on WebEx or if they are in person, but it's a Michelle Parsons.
I do not list Michelle Parsons, sir.
Thank you, Angie. Acknowledging that, are there any comments from my colleagues?
I have a question, council member.
Certainly. Please go forward.
Thank you. Deputy Director Speaks, you were talking about the use of the number of helicopters to keep costs down to preserve their life. It's hard to quantify that, I think, as a council member. And so I'm curious if you know, or if the department tracks the number of minutes per year that helicopters are in the air.
Councilmember, the hours are tracked due to there are specific maintenance requirements given the number of engine hours. So yes, and I'm more than happy to find that answer and give that to you. In general, I can tell you that the helicopters are generally up around 16 hours a day.
Any helicopter, so that's not one given one, it's all the fleet is up 16 hours a day.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. If there's additional nuance to that number that you would want to send follow up to my office, or possibly how that's spread out over the 5, I would be curious to kind of understand that. Does that make sense?
Yes, happy to do that. That is all put into a maintenance system, so I'm more than happy to get that for you now. I did say generally it was 16 hours during COVID. I know that some hours have been cut back. Forgive me, I don't know the exact number of hours that you're currently flying under COVID, but in the past, prior to COVID, the goal was 16 hours.
Are there 2 officers in each helicopter when it flies, or 1?
2, 1 pilot and then 1 spotter.
Okay. Do you know how many staffing hours that represents? So there's the equipment cost, which is, I know the last one we purchased was 3.4 million. Do you know then the corresponding staff cost of having two folks in the helicopter when it flies?
I am sure that I'll be able to calculate that. I'm happy to send it to your office. So, okay. So the overall cost would be the cost of purchase plus the maintenance, yearly maintenance, plus the yearly fuel, plus the salaries of the individuals. I'm happy to put that together for you now.
Sure. Thank you very much, Deputy Director, and thank you, Chair Brown.
Chair, I think you're still muted. Chair Brown, you're muted.
Oh, thank you, Council President.
Of course.
If there are no additional questions,
I think I saw Councilmember Dorns, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed it. I'm sorry. Councilmember Dorns?
No problem, Chair Brown. Deputy Director speaks. I was wondering for a moment if you could speak just to this particular piece of legislation itself. The way that I have reviewed it, it appears that this is an upgrade to the existing fleet. That this would not, if we were to not pass this legislation, that would not interrupt the current service of the helicopter fleet. Could you speak to that or confirm that?
Councilman Dorns, I'm afraid I cannot. I am not knowledgeable on that. I don't know whether, for example, in the new helicopter, whether or not that initially included a GIS mapping system, or they were relying on these federal funds to purchase that mapping system. If it was already included, this would be an upgrade, you're correct. If not, they could have purchased the new copter without this mapping system, and it would be vital in order to utilize the copter. So let me look that up, and I'm happy to report tomorrow the answer.
Thank you, but this evening we don't have an answer to that. Just to be clear.
I do not know the specific answer to that question, sir.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Director.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, as Council President, just wanted to ask a question regarding timeline. As we know, we are having this specific conversation around demilitarization and what that means. As part of the Obama order, helicopters are listed under the controlled items, and so we are in the middle of a discussion about helicopters and their usage and when we use them. But could somebody, Director, maybe speak to the timing of why we need to move this piece of legislation pertaining to the grant?
President Harden, this was a competitive federal grant that was applied for and received, and we just received word that we were fortunate enough to receive the federal funds. That's why it's being timed now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Director speaks again. There's a timeline, if I'm not mistaken, on this grant. Is that correct?
There is, and forgive me, I do not have the grant application in front of me. I cannot tell you when that deadline is coming up. But you do have a limited amount of time to accept federal funds.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions, I move to take this ordinance from the table.
Second.
Please call the roll by voice.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
No.
Ms. Faber?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, remove from the table.
And I move to amend this ordinance to 30-day.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
No.
Ms. Faber?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, they did.
And I now move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
No.
Ms. Faber?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance passed.
Council President, may I move on to Veterans and Senior Affairs?
Please.
In Veterans and Senior Affairs, I have ordinance 1394, 2020, to authorize an appropriation in the amount of $3,380,416 to the Recreation and Parks Grant Fund for the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging in connection with the Ohio Home Care Waiver Program and to declare an emergency. If there are no questions, I move for passage.
there a second?
Second.
Please
By
call the
voice.
roll. By voice.
Thank you.
By voice.
Ms. Brown?
Abstain. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Faber?
I think that was a yes from Ms. Favor.
Mr. Remy?
Yes, sorry.
Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance passed with the exception.
That's all I have this evening, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The next committee to come before council is the Public Utilities Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Dorans. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Before I get to public utilities, I want to apologize. In my duties as neighborhood chair, I meant to announce our West Side community meeting that's happening this Wednesday, July 8th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. You can RSVP with our Director of Neighborhood Engagement, Aaron Gibbons, at embiggons@columbus.gov. Also, please check the Columbus City Council's Facebook and Twitter pages for more details on how to RSVP and join us for that important meeting with folks on the west side. We've did one on the south side a few weeks ago, and actually we got all the technology to work, and it was a great discussion had by everyone that was able to join us. So folks on the west side want to join council this Wednesday, would certainly encourage them to do so. But with that, I'd like to move on to the Public Utilities Committee. Tonight I have ordinance number 1265-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter in a cooperation and purchase agreement, license agreement, and bill of sale with the Ohio Power Company, an expenditure of up to $50,000 from and within the Department of Water Operating Fund for the development, construction, and demolition of distributed energy resources microgrid project, to waive the competitive bid provisions of city code and to declare an emergency. This will serve the city's Tustin booster station located in the Pickerington and AEP, Ohio. Will provide the city a rebate of up to 95% to cover the majority of the energy storage system and ground-mounted solar panel system in accordance with the agreement. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, Tyson, President Harden?
Pass.
Next, I have ordinance number 1266-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into a contract with Census USA, Inc. for ongoing software, hardware, and maintenance of systems that is required of the Enhanced Meter Project for the Division of Water, to waive competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code, and to authorize an expenditure of $275,000. This operating contract is for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the Enhanced Meter Project. The Enhanced Meter Project will replace outdated and underperforming meters, installing radio transmitting infrastructure to allow for wireless readings related to billing software at a central location, which provides an environmentally friendly way to read meters within the city. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, Tyson, President Harden?
Pass.
Next, I have ordinance number 1335-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Utility to execute 2 construction contracts with Trapco Construction and John Irmo and Sons for the 2020 water main repairs project for the Division of Water, to authorize a transfer and expenditure of up to $1,268,533 within the Water General Obligation Bond Fund, to provide for the payment of prevailing wage services to the Department of Public Service, and to amend the 2019 capital improvement budget. These contracts will provide assistance to our water line maintenance crews in completing water main break repairs in a timely manner that should the number of breaks exceed our normal internal capacity to respond to. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, Tyson, President Harden?
Passed.
Next, I have ordinance number 1344-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter in a construction contract with George J. Eigel and Co. for the roof restoration Clintonville 1 Benham Glencoe Area 1 project, to authorize the appropriation and transfer of $2,179,833 from the Sanitary Sewer Reserve Fund to the Ohio Water Development Loan Fund, to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of $2,197,833 from the Water Ohio Water Development Loan Fund to authorize expenditure of up to $2,000 for prevailing wage services within the Sanitary General Obligation Voted Bond Fund. This project consists of replacing or redirecting downspouts from up to 381 houses in Clintonville, one blueprint area. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, I have ordinance number 1428-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into service contract with Lime Corp Ltd. for the Hapcremene Water Plant Sludge Removal Lagoon 1 2020 project to authorize an expenditure of up to $2,438,000 within the Water General Obligation Voted Bond Fund to authorize the payment of prevailing wage service to the Department of Public Service and to authorize an amendment to the 2019 capital improvements budget. The sludge lagoons at Hapcremene are used to temporarily store sludge produced under normal plant operations. The sludge in lagoons must be periodically removed to restore storage capacity. This project will remove sludge from Lagoon 1 and it will be transported for beneficial reuse outlets, providing another use for what have otherwise been disposed of in the McKinn Avenue quarry. Doing so will also preserve the life of the McKinley Avenue quarry. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. President Harden, may I move on to the Technology Committee?
Please.
Thank you. Tonight in technology, we have ordinance number 1386-2020 to appropriate $825,000 within the Special Income Tax Fund to authorize the Director of Finance and Management on behalf of the Department of Technology and various city agencies to associate all general budget reservations resulting from this ordinance with the appropriate universal term contract/purchase agreements for the purchase of new and replacement desktop computers, computer-related products, and equipment from 3 pre-established universal term contracts/purchasing agreements from Brown Enterprise Solutions LLC and Soft Choice LLC. To authorize the expenditure of $530,000 from the Department of Technology Information Services Division Information Services Operating Fund, and to authorize the expenditure of $825,000 from the Special Income Tax Fund, and to declare an emergency. The new computers and equipment authorized by this ordinance for the city's general fund agencies, the desktop computers, printers, servers, and computer-related products and equipment being replaced are outdated and or obsolete. The computer equipment being replaced is used for the operation of applications that are vital to the daily operations of the city of Columbus. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have in my committees this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Public Service and Transportation Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Favor. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Tonight in Public Service and Transportation, we have ordinance number 1453-2020 to authorize the Director of Public Service to execute agreements with and to accept and expend funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation relative to the resurfacing West Broad Street urban paving project, to authorize the return of any unused funds if necessary and to declare an emergency. This project encompasses resurfacing West Broad Street from the Guilford Avenue to Starling Street. Other planned improvements include partial and full depth repavement repairs, traffic signal upgrades and adjustments, new bikeway facilities, and ADA curb ramps. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I would move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have in public service. May I move on to criminal justice?
Please.
Tonight in the Criminal Justice Committee, we have ordinance number 1484-2020 to authorize and direct Columbus City Council to accept a $50,000 grant from the Ohio State University Alliance for the American Dream, a collaboration with Schmidt Futures, to authorize the appropriation of up to $50,000 from the unappropriated balance of the General Government Grants Fund, to authorize an appropriation within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund, to authorize a transfer of cash between the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund and the General Grants Fund, to authorize an expenditure of $79,200, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of City Code, to authorize the Columbus City Council to enter into contract with Smart Columbus LLC and to declare an emergency. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Dorrance, but I do want to congratulate him and his team for their work on this important effort thus far. Councilmember Dorrance, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council Member Favor, and I just appreciate the opportunity to speak to this legislation tonight, and certainly you and your team's partnership on this important project. So thanks for giving me a few minutes on the floor. Columbus City Council has been awarded a $50,000 grant from the Ohio State University Alliance for the American Dream, a collaboration with Schmidt Futures, in support of our efforts to digitize the record sealing application process and expand access to legal support services for Columbus residents with a criminal record. As some may know, I volunteered with the Columbus Legal Aid Society for years as a pro bono lawyer. One of the pro bono services I provided with them has been at their record sealing clinics. These clinics help folks gain access to the complex system of criminal record sealing. One clinic I volunteered at in late 2019 had several hundred clients attend. This clearly demonstrated the need in our community for these types of services. However, the reason that so many folks showed up that night is because someone had posted about the clinic and it went viral on social media. That night, I knew that we needed to do more to connect people with record sealing services, because people with criminal records are trapped in cycles of economic and social instability, as the uniqueness of this poses significant barriers to securing housing and employment. And because people of color are more likely to be arrested than white people in America, criminal records exacerbate and perpetuate racial inequality that is already present within our society. That's why for the last year, I've worked along with many here at Council and other organizations to create a new technology-based system to connect those in need with existing record sealing services. A $25,000 grant was previously awarded to Council for the same initiative in 2019 and accepted by Council in January 2020, bringing the total grant award for Council's record sealing initiative to $75,000. These funds will be used to cover necessary technological and administrative expenses incurred to fully develop and complete the grant proposal in order to secure further investment from the Alliance for the American Dream and Schmidt Futures. I certainly would be remiss to not give a special shout out to someone in my office, Hannah Miller, my legislative aide, the author of the grant, and certainly who's been serving as the team lead for this initiative and has done a hell of a job. I also want to recognize the Franklin County Municipal Clerk of Court, Larry Tyak, and her staff, the Columbus City Department of Technology, the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, and Smart Columbus, and others for their partnership, collaboration, and bringing us all one step closer to achieving equity for residents burdened by criminal record sealing. So my thanks goes out to them all for this important work, and excited to share more with the community as we build this important tool to help folks be able to take a step forward in their lives after a criminal incident. So with that, I certainly would like to turn it back over to Chair Favor.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorrance, and what a timely piece of legislation for us to discuss this evening. Once again, I just want to just extend a round of applause to your team for the amazing work that you have done for over the past year to bring this to fruition. I also want to acknowledge that we've received over 30 written pieces of testimony in support of this legislation. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Certainly, Councilmember Favor and certainly Councilmember Dorrance, just really appreciate this legislation. You know, as we pass the resolution, racism is a public health crisis, this certainly begins to move dealing with racism and trying to eradicate racism and its effects on individuals in our community. So thank you very much for this legislation. It will certainly go to helping individuals to be able to have a different start on their lives based on their records being sealed. Thank you so very much.
You're absolutely correct, Councilmember Tyson. Thank you. Any additional comments?
Chair, I would just like to congratulate Councilmember Dorrance and his staff. Hannah Miller has worked so hard on this, and it's been neat to hear the updates over the last several months. This is an example of good and innovative government. This is government working for the people, and I'm very, very proud this was birthed out of council, went out and created good partnerships. Excited about the relationship with smart cities as they continue to grow and expand in their mission. Now they're doing criminal justice work. Awesome. So thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Council President. Any additional comments? Well, seeing none, I'd move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have in my committees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Economic Development Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Remy. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. Tonight I have ordinance number 160X 2020 to declare the Scioto Peninsula New Community Authority to be organized in a body politic and corporate, to define the boundary of the authority's new community district, to provide the method of the Board of Trustees of the authority, fix the pursuant to ordinance number 0193/2017 and an economic development agreement pursuant to ordinance number 3121/2016 for its Scioto Peninsula project that will redevelop city-owned property located on the Scioto Peninsula immediately west of Cosi. The city and developer desire to form a new community authority pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 349, to support that redevelopment. On December 5th, 2019, a petition for the organization of the Scioto Peninsula New Community Authority was submitted to City Council. City Council, by Resolution 24X 2019, passed December 16th, 2019, determined the sufficiency of the petition and set a public hearing date on the petition, which was held on January 7th, 2020. This resolution officially creates the proposed new community authority and makes the city's initial appointment to the authority's Board of Trustees. Are there any questions? My colleagues and the director is available to answer any as well. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll on ordinance 0106X-2020.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, I have ordinance 63/2020 to authorize the finance and management to modify a contract with Experience Columbus for marketing services to restore tourism, convention business, strengthen the image of the city of Columbus, Ohio, to authorize the transfer of $2,285,432 in CARES Act funds from the Department of Development to the Department of Finance, and to authorize the The initial contract was entered into pursuant to 5040 and is funded of Columbus City Codes. Sorry about that. This initial contract
Councilmember,
I can't hear Councilmember at all.
your microphone's not working. One sec.
That's the 1, 2, 3. Hear me now?
I can hear you
that.
You can't?
Yeah, now we can.
Apologize for that. Where did you miss off?
I heard like the first two sentences and then it started going out.
All right. Okay, it's actually not. Yeah. It's not working again.
Is this better?
Yes.
The initial contract was entered. This initial contract was projected to be $10,839,000. However, due to the economic impact of the coronavirus, actual hotel motel excise tax collections are anticipated to be significantly less. The economic fallout of the coronavirus has impacted Ohio and the national economy at historic levels. Ohio's unemployment rate has risen to 16.8%, an increase of 11% previous pre-coronavirus levels. So this travel and tourism sector of the economy has been disproportionately impacted and is experiencing an unprecedented contraction in business due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I have asked the CEO and Executive Director of the Experience Columbus to join us this evening. Brian Ross should be available. Brian, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to speak to this legislation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council President Harden. Thank you, Council Member Remy. Council members Favor, Liz Brown, Tyson, Mitch Brown, and Dorans for allowing me to speak regarding this ordinance. We know that there are many priorities in our community, and now more than ever, Experience Columbus and the Greater Columbus Sports Commission can play an integral partnership in proactively addressing some of those urgencies. We will responsibly and collaboratively assist in igniting a travel economy that prior to the pandemic welcomed 43 million visitors who spent $7 billion and supported 78,000 jobs in Columbus and Franklin County. In 2019, $50 million in bed tax was generated, which helped fund our partners with the Greater Columbus Arts Council, just over $7.5 million, Human Services, $2.7 million, and affordable housing at $2 million. The city has lost 157 events, representing over 227,000 room nights and $193 million in visitor spend. That working with the Experience Columbus and Greater Columbus Sports Commission in 2020. Tourism economics data shows Columbus's MSA lost 47,000 jobs in the hospitality and leisure sector from February through April due to COVID-19. We need to help get these people back to work and help our nonprofit and small business partners begin doing business. Every $1 spent on tourism generates $37 back in visitor spending. A $10.6 million bed tax investment will generate $13.2 million in bed tax revenue, an additional $5.2 million in income tax. In income tax, totaling $18.4 million or a 174% return on investment. The Live Forward campaign is multifaceted and addresses our immediate challenges, opportunities over the next 3 to 8 months, and long-term convention and sporting event potential. If we don't communicate with our residents, potential visitors, and meeting professionals now, we will lose a lot of business opportunities when people are ready to choose destinations to visit. We will engage our residents responsibly and collaboratively with our partners to provide information on how to safely experience businesses, attractions, hotels, and venues that are open for business. We will also assist in promoting virtual experiences for those residents who may choose to engage digitally. Travel is the #1 expenditure for discretionary household spending. National studies show there is a tremendous pent-up demand. 69% of people, when comfortable, will get into a car and drive. The first trip people will take will be to visit friends and relatives, of which in 2019, Columbus welcomed 20.1 million visitors here for friends and relatives. We also need to proactively pursue future conventions and sporting events, keeping the momentum that we've invested in for ASAE, PCMA, and the Women's Final Four. We have over 340 groups representing 1.1 million tentative room nights from 2021 through 2027. It's imperative that we keep that momentum going forward. Investing in Experience Columbus and the Greater Columbus Sports Commission is investing in our city's human and economic development, image, and quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate that. Director, do you have any comments that you'd like to make in regards to this important legislation?
Yes, thank you, President Harden, Chair Remy, members of City Council. We're moving forward this legislation because it's important to the economic recovery of our city. that we, as Brian mentioned, we need to make sure we maintain the momentum that we've experienced from our previous investment in this work of Experience Columbus, but it also serves those residents who are working in our service industry. It's important. They were hit first as COVID impacted the community, and we're afraid that they're going to probably be hit the longest. So whatever we can do to maintain our momentum and get some wins during this pandemic, bring those jobs back, I think it's critically important. I'll point out when we first received the CARES funding dollars, we announced that it was going to go into 3 buckets. About half of the money was going to go to support the response to the health crisis. Another $50 million was going to go to serve our residents in the human services. And to date, working with council, we've appropriated close to $20 million towards human services. And the last amount, approximately $26 million, is for the economic recovery. We have put money towards helping our small businesses. Now we're looking to put some money towards helping those agencies that have been funded through the bed tax and have been impacted by the COVID crisis. So this is really critical as we work towards our economic recovery. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage by voice.
Second.
Please call the row by voice.
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
No.
Ms. Favor?
No.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance passed. Mr. Chair, if it's all right, can we take a pause for zoning? May I have a motion to recess for zoning?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
All right, we will reconvene in 5 minutes for zoning.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
A motion to dispense with the reading of the journal.
So moved.
Member Tyson chairs that committee, and all members serve on the committee. Councilmember Tyson, the floor is yours.
He might be muted.
You're muted still, sorry. There we go.
And we provide an opportunity for rebuttal from the applicant. On the advice of the city attorney's office, anyone who wishes to speak for or against any council variance, including I will. The provision 332.2 and the Greater Hilltop Area Commission's recommendation is 10-1-2. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 1467-2020 to rezone 975 Hilliard and Rome Road, being 0.97 acres located on the west side of Hilliard and Rome Road, 255 feet south of Fetter Road, from R Rural District to C4 Commercial District. The applicant is Nathan Klein, care of attorney Craig Moncrief. The proposed use is a commercial development. The city department's recommendation is approval, and the Far West Side Area Commission's recommendation is approval 7-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, seeing none, I move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Brown, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Thank you. The next ordinance is 1485-2020 to rezone 2492 West Dublin Grandview Road, being 0.90 acres located on the north side of West Dublin Grandview Road, 290 feet east of McVeigh Boulevard, from the R Rural Residential District to the C2 Commercial District. The applicant is GMD Holdings LLC, care of attorney Mike Shannon. The proposed use is an office development. The city department's recommendation is approval, and the Far Northwest Coalition's recommendation is approval 5-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, seeing none, I move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. The next ordinance is a component, is a variance for the previous ordinance we just passed. So again, anyone here this evening who wishes to speak either for or against this council variance, including staff, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in. I wish to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Please answer, I will. Ordinance 1486-2020 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3372.704C, setback requirements, and 3372.705BF, building design standards of the Columbus City Codes for property located at 2492 West Dublin Granville Road, to permit an office development with reduced community commercial overlay standards in the C2 Commercial District. The applicant again is GMD Holdings LLC, care of attorney Mike Shannon. The proposed use is an office development. The city department's recommendation is approval, and the Far Northwest Coalition's recommendation is approval 5-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, seeing none, I move to amend as submitted to the clerk.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Amended.
Thank you. And now I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 1494-2020 to rezone 543 Taylor Avenue, being 6.82 acres located at the northwest and southwest corners of Taylor Avenue and Maryland Avenue, from R3 residential and CPD commercial plan development districts to CPD commercial plan development district. The applicant is The Ohio State University, Physical Planning and Real Estate, care of attorney Jeffrey Brown. The proposed use is a parking lot expansion to the medical center. The City Department's recommendation is approval, and the Near East Area Commission's recommendation is approval 9-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, seeing none, I move to amend as submitted to the clerk.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Amend it.
Thank you, and now I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. And the let's see, the final ordinance in this committee is 1496-2020. Anyone here this evening who wishes to speak either for or against this council variance, including staff, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in. I wish to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Please answer, I will. All right, so it's 1496-2020, and is to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3332.38H, private garage, 3332.21 building lines, 3332.25 maximum side yards required, 3332.26 minimum side yard permitted, and 3332.38G private garage of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 245 Lansing Street to permit habitable space above a detached garage with reduced development standards in the R2F residential district. The applicant is Michael Ars. The proposed use is a habitable space above a detached garage. The City Department's recommendation is approval, and the German Village Commission's recommendation is approval 6-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you, and that concludes the zoning agenda for today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
All right, we stand adjourned. Can we get 5 more minutes? I'm gonna blame this one on Councilman Reed. He has to fix his computer.
moved.
Is there a second?
Oh, I have a problem.
Oh, see, we can do both of them.
Second.
I have a little bit of a problem. Do you have this legislation? It's not on here. Do you have this legislation to read the? I don't. Oh, here, I'll just use this. Okay.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Meeting is reconvened. Councilman.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the patience this evening. Next, ordinance number 1364, 2020, to authorize the Director of Department of Finance and Management to modify a contract with the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Inc., for the purpose of restoring and sustaining arts and cultural services that enrich the Columbus community, to authorize the transfer of $1,558,337 in CARES Act funds from the Department of Development to the Department of Finance, and to authorize the expenditure of $1,558,337 from the CARES Act fund. In an effort to address the economic impact to Columbus and Central Ohio's cultural arts community, the City of Columbus is proposing that more than $1.5 million in economic recovery funds be provided to the Greater Columbus Arts Council as a means to replace lost hotel, motel tax proceeds for the first 6 months of 2020. These economic recovery funds were provided to the City of Columbus as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. The $2 trillion economic relief package was passed by Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support and signed into law March 27, 2020. The Greater Columbus Arts Council will utilize these funds to continue administering a variety of art and cultural programs and grants in order to help restore the local cultural arts community. This evening, we have Tom Katzenmeier, President and CEO of the Greater Columbus Arts Council, to share a few words. Tom, the floor is yours.
Mr. Katzenmeier, you are still muted, sir.
There we go. How's
There
that?
we go.
Okay,
Welcome
good.
to council, sir.
Thank you. It's good. The hour is late. Thank you for having me tonight. It's good to see everybody. Thank you, Emmanuel and Priscilla, for your service on our board. We appreciate the opportunity to address council this evening. So thanks for your past critical support and willingness during this difficult time to assist in creating stability in the nonprofit arts sector. As you are aware, arts and cultural organizations are critical to education, tourism, and quality of life in Columbus. The Greater Columbus Arts Council is working to ensure this essential part of our community ecosystem can continue to provide the programming and services our community has come to depend on. So since the start of the stay-at-home order in March, the Arts Council has pivoted 2 programs to address the loss of income by artists and cultural organizations. First, we raised private funds to supplement our support for professional artist grant program and provided emergency artist relief fund grants to 428 artists across all disciplines for a total of $328,566 to help artists meet basic needs. Secondly, we revised our operating support grant program timing to ease the burden of application and reporting, enable organizations to address current fiscal reality in the face of the pandemic, and to provide funding in 3 phases with award amounts in each of the 3 phases contingent upon available funds. About 3 weeks ago, we awarded $1.498 million. The second round of those awards will be announced in September. Your support tonight certainly ensures that second payment to these organizations. So again, I thank you for that. In addition, as you know, in response to the protests following the death of George Floyd, the Arts Council, in partnership with CAPA, launched a response by employing artists to create murals around the city on plywood erected in front of businesses. The effort drew grassroots support from artists and businesses, resulted in nearly 200 murals around the city since June 1, depicting support for the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as images of unity, love, and hope for the future. All the artists hired by CAPA and the Arts Council were paid, and GCAC connected businesses to artists and advocated for artist compensation. A number of other businesses, including the Heinz Company, which manages the Huntington Center, also paid artists to paint. The Arts Council is continuing to serve as a connection point for ideas regarding the future of the murals, and for the time being has committed to focusing on documentation, preservation, and storage of the mural. The CARES Act funding being discussed tonight will be critical as we work to ensure financial assistance to organizations who have had nearly zero revenue since March. The CARES Act funds will be targeted towards three primary areas. Number one, the majority of the dollars will assist the 25 arts organizations who receive operating support from the Arts Council with basic unrestricted operating support. These organizations include the largest nonprofit organizations, arts nonprofit employers in the city. They have implemented widespread layoffs and furloughs, and most will continue to operate at a much reduced attendance capacity for months to come. These organizations also support major educational programs for Columbus Public School children. These funds will also enable us to continue work begun in late 2019 before COVID hit, assisting operating support grantees with capacity building, specifically developing effective risk management protocols, providing strategic guidance regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and prioritizing board governance and relationship building. Number two, the smaller portion of the funds will enable the continuation of project support grants for small and mid-sized organizations, Thrive grants for organizations led by people of color, and Big Idea grants for artists. Project support provides funding for activities and outreach in Columbus neighborhoods across the city, such as the Asian Festival, Columbus Gospel Fest, and the Summer Jam West in the Hilltop. We are currently reviewing a second round of funding in this program. Big Ideas, a new program, has one more deadline in October and has supported programs such as the Columbus Black Theater Festival. The first Thrive deadline, which is a new program, is in August, and we will choose 3 applicants in that program. And just as a reminder that this is a new program that was a direct outcome of the ticket fee work with council last year. Thrive is intended to address disparities in inequitable funding in the arts and its impact on arts and cultural organizations led by and serving people of color. Thrive will provide unrestricted funding and resources to organizations of color that historically have experienced barriers to capital and resources. And finally, the smallest portion of the funds will assist us in maintaining the current employment levels at the Arts Council to accomplish the above tactics. So in summary, virtually all of this money being voted on tonight will be going directly into the community. And in closing, I'd like to invite you to stop by our offices to see a brand new exhibition called Creative Women of Color, featuring artworks created by 15 local women of color. It's actually being hung this week, and I'd be glad to walk you through it. The exhibition was mentioned in the Columbus Dispatch this morning. Thank you for your time and for your support and everything you do for the arts sector in Columbus.
Thank you so much, Tom. We really appreciate your input this evening and value what the Greater Columbus Arts Council does for the city of Columbus and the entire region. And so with that, Director Stevens, did you have any additional comments you'd like to make this evening?
Thank you, President Hardin, Chair Remy, members of council. I would just add, this is about economic recovery. We all know the important role the arts play in our economic development efforts. So I hope you support this effort as well.
So,
Councilmember
Remy, I just want to make a comment. Thanks, Tom, for being here. And certainly the arts is important to our economic recovery. And I'm but it also enhances our quality of life. And right now, with what's happening within our community, even Tom mentioned with the murals, the purpose of those murals, it is really to be able to, it's a voice for people, but it also, again, through that voice, it will enhance individuals' quality of life. And so I'm also just real pleased that Tom has certainly speaking today about, equity in his presentation, that as again, we are focusing on the issue of racism and inequities in our community, how Tom and the organization GCAC is focused on dealing with those inequities. And so I appreciate him spending that much time today sharing the work that's going on that GCAC is doing in the community. And finally, Tom, just want to, again, these dollars, as you just stated, are really dollars that are just kind of moving through GCAC to be able to help this community to continue to thrive. So thank you for your presentation today, and thank you, Councilmember Remy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tyson. Are there any other questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage by voice.
Second.
Please call the roll by voice.
Ms. Brown?
Abstain.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorrance?
Yes.
Ms. Faber?
Yes.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
Ms. Tyson?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Next, I have ordinance number 1443, 2020, to authorize the Department of Development to enter into an economic development agreement with 1489 Rohr Holding LLC to outline the plans and certain commitments of the city and developer related to the proposed development of the real property currently known as Franklin County Auditor Tax Parcel ID numbers 495-266-702, 495-266-703, and 495-266-704, consisting of 229.993 acres located south of Rohr Road between the CSX Railroad and Lockbourne Road, and to declare an emergency. The developer, excuse me one moment, please. The developer is proposing to construct a $56 million industrial warehouse distribution development, including a minimum of approximately 2 million square feet of industrial warehouse distribution space on 229.993 acres located south of Rohr Road between the CSX Railroad and Lockbourne Road. The developer will finance the upfront costs of design and construction and cause to be designed, constructed additional site improvements, amenities, and regional public improvements. The Department of Development will submit for City Council consideration subsequent legislation to establish non-school tax increment financing area, including the site, in order to support the reimbursement of costs of establishing of eligible public improvements necessary to support the development of the project, and the Department of Development will submit for City Council consideration legislation for a property tax abatement of the project that meets the terms set forth from the Central Enterprise Zone. This evening, we have Hawkins Integrin, Managing Principal of Warden Capital, to share a few words. Ms. Hawkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the volume's a little light.
I'll try to speak better. Thank you, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you and be considered before council. We worked really hard with the economic development team on this project over the last several months, and we appreciate the city's support of this, especially in these difficult and uncertain economic times. We're really excited about Columbus market, and we think it's a great opportunity for industrial projects, and this will, we think, allow the city to compete with surrounding municipalities for new industrial projects and create good jobs for the community, and it also will be able to build some new offsite improvements as part of this project that will benefit the surrounding region as well. And so the incentives and the TIF agreement, the EASY and the EDA are all critical parts of that. And so we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be considered for this tonight.
Thank you very much. Director, do you have any comments that you'd like to make on this?
Yes, thank you, President Harden, Chair Reamy, members of council. We're really excited to be bringing this piece of legislation forward, as well as the companion ordinances that create the TIF and the enterprise zone agreement. Getting an investment of $56 million that is going to create at least 2 million square feet of industrial space out in Rickenbackers is pretty significant. We're also pleased by the developer taking the risk and making the upfront public regional infrastructure improvements that are needed. Reminder of the TIF, they will get reimbursed for those costs, but it's going to require them to build at least 2 million square feet of facility. What we find as we compete not only within our own region, but across the country, we don't have enough speculative space, whether it's office or warehousing. So having this new speculative space that's going to be brought forth in the first 550,000 square feet is pretty significant for increasing our competitiveness across the country. We're able to do that at an enterprise zone agreement, a 10-year 75%, which is below what the market is down that area compared to our neighboring municipalities, which are doing 15-year 100%. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this and future ordinances that are coming forth through this project.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you very much. Next, I have ordinance number 1447-2020 to create the Rickenbacker 317-5709.40 B TIF area to declare improvements to those TIF parcels to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, to require the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, to require the distribution of the applicable portion of those service payments to the Columbus City School District and Hamilton Local School District, and to establish a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of the remainder of those service payments, to otherwise implement the economic development agreement submitted for City Council consideration and declare an emergency. This is a companion piece to the previous legislation. Annual service payments in lieu of taxes will be made with respect to the improvement to the new TIF parcels. The applicable portion of those service payments will be distributed locally, directly to the Columbus City School District and Hamilton Local School District in the same manner as usual, in the amount that school districts would have received in real property taxes and that had that tax exemption not been granted. The remaining non-school portion of those service payments will be paid to the city for deposit into a new TIF fund established in the ordinance to be used to fund public infrastructure improvements benefiting the new TIF parcels. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, I have ordinance number 1449-2020 to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with 1489 War Holding LLC for a tax abatement of 75% for a period of 10 consecutive years in consideration of a total proposed capital investment of approximately $12,600,000 in the creation of 4 net new full-time permanent positions with an estimated annual payroll of approximately $124,800. This is a companion piece to the previous 2 pieces of legislation. This Columbus City School District has been advised of this project. This legislation is being presented as 30 days legislation. We do have one speaker on this particular ordinance this evening, Joe Motil. Joe, if you'd come to the podium, state your name and your address and any particular affiliation you may have. You have 3 minutes to speak. Not yet. Not yet. Is the mic on? Go ahead and say something, Joe.
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
You got it? All right. I'd hate for you not to hear what I have to say. President Harden, Chair Reamy, members of City Council, Joe Motil, I live at 167 West Cook Road. Another unjustified property tax giveaway to a company that's been capitalizing on warehouse distribution centers in many of the risk-free logistic locations around the country. And it's laughable that the public should believe Mayor Ginther, Director Stevens, and this city council that this investor is going to spend $12.6 million on constructing 550,000 square feet of warehouse space located in the heart of Rickenbacker's logistics center on speculation. And again, you use this term speculation as if they are taking some huge risk on building warehouse space at Rickenbacker, and property tax theft is required to attract investment in this area. Tell me, Director Stevens, and any of you city council members listening, who can continue to steal property tax from revenue from educational needs of our city's public schools, how many of the dozens of speculative warehouses that have been built over the years at Rickenbacker and have been given tax abatements in the tens of millions of dollars are sitting empty? I'd be willing to bet there's not one. Rickenbacker is strategically located within a 10-hour drive of 47% of the population of the United States and 33% of Canada's population. As of last year, the vacancy rate for distribution space at Rickenbacker was just under 4%. And it is predicted that due to the ongoing increase of consumer buying trends in e-commerce, the logistics center at Rickenbacker will continue to grow and prosper. If the city council wants to boast about giving away a $3.34 million tax abatement that promises to create 4 jobs paying $15 an hour while increasing our annual city revenues by $3,100 a year, and then the recall efforts of Mayor Ginther need to be extended to every member of city council due to your lack of leadership. There have been loud cries of inequality and defunding taking place here in Columbus and across the country. And as you well know, the inequality and defunding is by no means limited to policing. A friend of mine recently posted on her Facebook page that, quote, tax abatements are structural racism. Is your company spouting platitudes about supporting Black Lives Matter while pocketing tax money that should have been used to serve communities of color, decimating our inner ring neighborhoods through disinvestment that disproportionately affects Black and brown people? Your company is the problem. Your company is the looter. Give back the money you stole from Black people. The city council recently stated in a press release that, quote, it is focused on eradicating systemic racism, police misconduct, and social injustice through every means possible, end of quote. If you mean what you say, then you need to stop granting these tax abatements that disinvest in the educational opportunities of the Black and multiracial students who make up 61% of the students who are enrolled in our Columbus public schools. Stop granting tax abatements that contribute to our 30% foreclosure rate and that benefit only high-end rental developments. And amend your 10% affordable housing set-aside policy that discriminates against Black and brown people. So are you going to do something about social and economic injustice, or just going to be more talk? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Motil. Director Stevens, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, President Hart and Chair Remy. As we work to bring this project online, it is our hope that it will fill up quickly. Once it expands and grows its payroll beyond $1 million, we will share 50% of the income tax revenue with the school, as well as capture those income tax revenue dollars back into our general fund to serve our city services. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council has.
Thank you very much, Director Stevens. Are there any questions or comments this evening from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Hart.
Passed.
Thank you very much. Next, I have ordinance 1460, 2020 to appropriate and authorize the expenditures of TIF revenues to be deposited in the Rickenbacker 317 Municipal Public Improvement Tax Increment Equivalent Fund, to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a TIF agreement with 1489 Rohr Holding LLC to provide for the reimbursement of design and construction costs of public infrastructure improvements within and around the Rickenbacker 317 TIF area in far south Columbus near Rickenbacker International Airport, and to declare an emergency. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Hart.
Passed.
And finally, I have ordinance number 1498, 2020, to create the Scioto Peninsula Tax Increment Financing Area, encompassing a portion of the Scioto Peninsula redevelopment area, to declare improvements to those parcels to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, to require the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, to require the distribution of the applicable portion of those service payments to the Columbus City Schools, to establish a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of the remainder of those services payments, and to declare an emergency. This was a companion piece to the earlier legislation that we read. And so are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
And this is all I have in economic development this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Health and Human Services Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Tyson. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Harden. So the first ordinance that I have in my committee this evening is ordinance number 1331-2020. It is to authorize and direct the Board of Health to accept additional grant funds from the Ohio Department of Health for the Tobacco Use Prevention Cessation Grant Program in the amount of $132,000, to authorize the appropriation of $132,000 to the Health Department and the Health Department's Grants Fund, and to declare an emergency. Tobacco use is contributing factor in 4 of the 5 leading causes of death in Linden, the South Side, and the West Side neighborhood. More specifically, cancer is the leading cause of death in Linden and the West Side priority communities, while heart disease is the leading cause of death in the South Side communities. Tobacco use prevention and cessation grant funds are used to reduce exposure to secondhand smoke through policy implementation at a multi-unit housing complexes, work sites, outdoor spaces, schools, universities, and college campuses. This grant will address youth prevention and policy development, addressing smoke-free living with the goal of reducing chronic diseases. In addition to campaigns, data will be gathered around tobacco-targeted marketing strategies. This data will be utilized to support tobacco retailer density policy and a flavor ban policy. The data will be gathered as a result of this legislation is important because we know that tobacco companies have specifically targeted minority communities, particularly African Americans, with intense advertising and promotional efforts. A wealth of research indicates that African American neighborhoods have a disproportionate number of tobacco retailers, pervasive tobacco marketing, and in particular, more marketing of menthol products. And again, this is, we're going to continue to focus on racism as a public health crisis. And so, again, this is more for helping for prevention and has shared information about who it's impacting. And if you want more information regarding these programs, you can contact Ms. Stone at columbus.gov at 614-645-3173. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage.
Second.
Second.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. And now I want to introduce from the floor ordinance 1603-2020 is to authorize Columbus City Council to enter into contracts with Lions Counseling and Consultation Consulting Services, and Deborah Miles Consulting LLC in support of the Commission on Black Girls to authorize appropriations and expenditures of $41,000 within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund and to declare an emergency. Both consultants have been working with the Commission to launch the final report, which will be released in a few weeks. Pardon me?
I apologize, Councilmember.
That's okay. We're excited to share our work with the community and support Black girls through research and data that we have collected. We hope our efforts will result in improving the lives of Black girls. And finally, I look forward to previewing the report with several girls this Friday and hearing their thoughts regarding the report. So if there are no questions or comments, I move for passage.
I'm going to second, but I just have a quick comment. I want to thank you, Councilmember Tyson, for conceiving of this commission and seeing through step by step with the really diligent work it takes to diagnose the most salient issues for Black girls in our community. So I just want to thank you and full-throatedly second.
Thank you so much, Councilmember President Pro Tem Brown, and I look forward to sharing the information that we have received from our girls, from individuals that work with our girls, to uplift them so that, again, we will be able to make sure that our girls will be able to enhance their overall quality of life. And so I look forward to sharing that information with our council. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we moved for passage, right? I think so.
Yeah, that was my second.
Seconded, so yes.
Please call the roll.
Right.
Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. And the next ordinance from the floor is ordinance number 1643-2020. It is to require citizens of Columbus to wear face coverings in public spaces to reduce and to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to allow for enforcement of and assessment of a civil penalty by Columbus Public Health for a violation of said mandate and to declare an emergency. On March 13th, the Columbus Board of Health declared a public health emergency due to COVID-19. On March the 22nd, an order was issued requiring all Ohioans to stay in their homes to prevent further spread of COVID-19. And after several weeks, the state began to transition to reopening in May. While the numbers were beginning to decrease, as we are able to perform activities that require us to leave our homes and frequent public spaces, we are once again seeing COVID-19 numbers significantly increase and peak to numbers that we have not seen since April. Columbus and Franklin County are reporting the most cases and deaths in our state. Further, the governor has issued a new county alert system, which is comprised of a 4-level ranking order. Franklin County is included in one of the 7 counties that has ranked at the second to the highest level of red, which means that there is very high exposure. In addition, it is suggested that people decrease in-person interactions and consider necessary travel only and limit attending gatherings of any number. In addition, we know that face coverings are important and to proactively combat this dangerous disease. According to the CDC, cloth face coverings are most likely to reduce the spread of COVID when they are widely used by people in public settings. The CDC recommends that people wear face cloth coverings in public spaces and when around people who don't live in your household, especially when social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. As we experience this pandemic, protecting the health of ourselves and the others is critical. That is why we are considering this ordinance this evening. While there is an enforcement and a penalty component, to educate and create awareness on this of the importance of masks. Therefore, warnings will be given for the first infraction. Moreover, we also want to make sure that people who do not have the resources necessary for face coverings are not penalized, so masks will also be given away. This legislation that we're presenting this evening is not intended to be punitive. The intent of this ordinance is protect public health. The health of our economy is at stake as well. We are currently a level 3 red county. If we trigger one more of the health indicators, we become a level 4 purple county. The state guidelines is to stay at home and only travel when necessary for purple counties. we would essentially be returning to the restrictions we were under in late March and April, and our local economy would suffer as a result. In these critical times, wearing a mask is an act of kindness. It is about keeping you as well as those around you safe and limiting exposure to COVID-19 as much as possible when in public. And this legislation also, again, as you know, that the mayor passed a executive order and ordinance. This ordinance, again, is providing some additional provide some additional applications to the executive order that the mayor has passed. And so with that, I'm going to call on Edward Johnson, the Director of Public Health Policy, to address education, enforcement, and exemptions. Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Tyson, and thank you for your leadership throughout the holiday weekend. I know it's never easy to take calls when you're trying to spend time with your family, so I do appreciate that and the efforts of all the members of council. As you mentioned, there were some differences between the executive order signed by Mayor Ginther and the legislation before the members of council. In this legislation, there will be civil penalties imposed for violations of the ordinance. For businesses, this would constitute the first violation would be a warning, an education, and the opportunity to remediate any infractions. At Columbus Public Health, we feel very good about that. To date, when it comes to health orders and issuing warning letters and doing compliance visits and checks, we have approximately a 95% compliance rate. And so we feel confident that our businesses are ready to step up to the plate and take part in a mask requirement for our community. In the event, and we think that it will be very rare, that there's a second violation that would end up being a $500 violation on the business. Third and subsequent violations would be $1,000 fines as well. Additionally, the legislation before you does consider individual violations. When that occurs, that would be an instance where we would take that opportunity to provide education, to let folks know that masks stop infectious aerosol particles. And so as we're in the midst of this pandemic, as you mentioned, the Public Health Advisory System has us as a level 3 red county. We would also provide a mask to an individual. We think that this is a great way to say there's really no reason for a second violation. However, should there be a second violation by an individual, that would be a $25 fine, and any subsequent violations would also be $25. Here at the local health department, we will be tasking our sanitarians in our environmental health division with enforcing this ordinance should it pass this evening. And with that, I would turn the floor back to you, Chairwoman Tyson, or answer any questions as I'm able to.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none, I would now like to call on Deputy Director Speaks for more information on how public safety will be addressing the mask requirement.
Mr. Speaks, I'm sorry. Director, you're still muted.
Better?
Thank you.
Thank you, President Harden, Councilmember Tyson, members of council. Thank you for this very important piece of legislation that will help us all help to lessen the threat of COVID-19. The Department of Public Safety will work with both divisions of fire and police to fulfill the intent and the letter of this ordinance.
All right. Are there any questions or any from Deputy Director Speaks?
Can I ask a clarifying question, Councilmember?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Deputy Director Speaks. Can you speak a little bit more specifically to how public safety officers or firefighters will be given guidelines to interpret the clause that exists in the ordinance about sort of preventing duty? I'm sorry that I don't have the exact quoting of the clause, but it seems to have some discretion in there. And I want to understand what the public safety department, what instructions you will be given around how that should be interpreted by each division and those who work within it.
Councilmember Brown, when I read section Q, then it says individuals while acting in their official capacity as a public safety employee or emergency responder when wearing a face covering would interfere with or limit the ability to carry out their official duties or functions. That to me sets the premise that a face mask should be worn. And then it makes an exception for quote, when it would interfere with or limit the ability to carry out their duties. So I think that, again, that sets a standard of the face mask should be worn. However, in certain emergency circumstances, for example, the best example I could think off the top of my head is when an officer is giving instructions to a person, perhaps the face mask would be down so that they would be able to more readily understand and see the mouth, see the lips moving, so as to assure clear communication. Off the top of my head, that would be an example where I think it would be permissible giving those instructions to lower the face mask. That's how I read the ordinance.
Okay, I would request that those instructions be, passed by public health, because in certain circumstances, if an officer is interacting with a member of the public and giving instructions, actually taking the mask down when you talk defeats the purpose. That's when respiratory droplets are expelled. So I think you mean in
emergency circumstances.
Emergency circumstances, right?
Yes, under section R, correct.
So just being as explicit as possible, because the word interfere, I think, can be broadly interpreted. And so my request would be to be as specific as possible with officers about what interfering really means for a mask, because honestly, when I'm out in a mask, I feel like it interferes with what I'm doing too, right? I have to shout, or talk a little bit louder to get my point across. There are difficulties that come with doing this very important thing to safeguard public health. So that would be my request. I'm hoping that you can guarantee you'll take that back to the police folks and our firefighters, and try to get that sort of infused in the directions that the individual employees of each division are given.
Yes, I was going to meet with both our HR department and legal, and I will also include the Board of Health.
Okay.
And give those instructions. Great idea.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Tyson, can I?
Councilmember Favors, yes. Favor.
Thank you. Councilmember, I just wanted to extend my appreciation to you, your team, as well as council staff who worked around the clock to keep this legislation ready for us to respond to today, just as quickly as we have. And also just reiterate that this legislation is not intended to be punitive to our residents, that we are truly trying to ensure that we don't go into the next category, which would trigger could potentially trigger another shutdown, take another hit to the economy. These are things that we don't want to have in the city of Columbus and around Columbus. And so, my message again is just to be is to be clear and just to wear a mask. I know that we're all tired of it, but quite frankly, I'd rather get it over now so that we can limit the amount of exposure that we have and just decrease the amount of time that we're spending in this COVID world. So if we want to keep the economy open, if we want to have some semblance of a summer, let's do what our health advisors and experts are asking us to do, which is just to wear a mask. Thank you, Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. And I agree with you. This legislation is to save lives and to save our community. So I agree 100% with you. I also want to share that this ordinance also provides for an appeals process for those who could be cited for violation. We're hopeful that no one is cited for a violation, that everyone that's listening and viewing audience will see that this is really about how we can continue to keep our community safe and move our community forward. If there are
Councilmember
no
Tyson?
other, yes,
Our chair.
Council President Harden, yes.
I just want to join Councilmember Faber in saying thank you for your leadership, for your team's work, and for all the council members, staffs who worked throughout the weekend, worked with the mayor's administration, the health department, to add to the mayor's original executive order from last Thursday. As Councilmember Faber said, and as you said, Chair Tyson, this is to signal the seriousness of this issue to our public, to the folks who may think that these are slight suggestions. That is not what this is. There was a mandate that was signed by the mayor on Thursday. We are now codifying that, saying that it is critically important that if you are out in public and you cannot stay within 6 feet from another person, then you must have a mask on. As Councilmember Tyson said, we don't mean for this legislation to be punitive, but we're trying to save lives. And we're trying to keep the economy open because we can't afford to go back on all the hard work that we've already done. And so this legislation will give the health department the authority that they need to make sure that to help keep us all safe. And so just appreciated everybody's work on this. It was a lot of conversation.
Yes. Yes, and I absolutely want to thank each council member and their staff. This has been a lot of work, and we support, as you said, the administration. And this is just codifying the executive order. And again, so with that in mind, we just want everyone just to mask up. And Councilmember Ribby has had we've all had a campaign about just mask up and save lives. Are there any other comments from my council colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Let's call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
And thank you. That concludes my legislation in my committee this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final committee to come before council is the Rules and Reference Committee. I chair that committee. The first ordinance that we're going to consider in Rules and Reference is 1566-2020, which is, I am going to actually ask for an assist from Chair Mitch Brown, and I'm going to turn things over to the chair. There we go.
Thank you, Council President. Ordinance 1566 is to amend section 1903.01 of the Columbus City Codes to allow for external criminal investigations of sworn personnel, to repeal existing section 1903.01 and to declare an emergency. This amendment to the Columbus City Code is a step toward instilling trust in the process our community expects to hold police officers accountable. While the majority of officers conduct themselves in accordance with the principles of the Division of Police and the community, in instances of officer misconduct, it is vital to have a system of accountability. Our community deserves to have an independent investigation and civilian disciplinary review of all officer-involved shootings, cases of in-custody death, and instances where use of force results in significant injury or death, and occasions in which a vehicular pursuit or stopping tactic results in a life-threatening injury or death. I applaud the Ohio Governor, Mike DeWine, for offering to engage the State Bureau of Criminal Investigations as an independent entity who will complete these investigations. I'd also like to thank Attorney General Dave Yost for his cooperation in creating a memorandum of understanding with Mayor Ginther and the Columbus City Attorney Zach Klein to perform independent investigations of police misconduct. I'm eager to see the details of this agreement and will insist that the community be consulted and informed of its details before the agreement is finalized. I'd like to ask Laura Baker Morris for her comments with regards to the City Attorney's Office regarding the legality of this process. Ms. Baker Morris?
Thank you, Chair Brown. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. there's an existing provision of the city code that would require the Columbus Division of Police to investigate any time that an employee is involved in either a physical injury or damage to property. So we've taken that particular provision of the city code and we've now codified the referrals of the officer-involved shootings and or uses of force that results in near life-threatening injury or death of human beings. These particular investigations were previously conducted within the Division of Police by the CERT teams. Now they will be conducted by BCI. The legislation is necessary in order to alter the existing city code that specifically requires all such investigations to be conducted by the Division of Police. And it is specific to the particular harms that I've just mentioned that they would go to BCI. They will be conducted as criminal investigations, which was the current manner that they were investigated within the division, but they will be conducted wholly outside of the division by the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. They, upon conducting their investigation, will then make a determination to bring that material to the county prosecutor, as has been the practice within the Division of Police. The memorandum of understanding is currently being going back and forth to make sure all the terms are precise and everybody understands what's expected or what's required. But the memorandum of understanding incorporates the language coming from this particular ordinance.
Council President, we do have some speakers this evening with regards to this legislation. Sukri Farah.
Hear me? Hello, you guys can hear me?
Yes.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most merciful and most compassionate. Hello, my name is Sukri. I am not with any org, but want to shout out People's Budget Columbus and their work on resource and information sharing around defunding. I have been disgusted by the language and actions from this council these past few weeks, including tonight, unfortunately. The community demands have been consistent. We want the city to defund the Columbus Police Department, but members of this council want to keep talking about reform. You cannot reform an inherently violent and racist organization such as the Columbus Police Department. The CPD regularly terrorizes Black people in the city. Any ordinance or measure that is discussed to further equip them and further fund them is at the very least a slap in the face of every Black person in the city. At most, it is a death sentence, when we know that any interaction between a police officer and a Black person, adult or child, can be lethal. So we the people are opposed to and reject the ordinance 1566-2020. We reject any power given to the police chief as it relates to the investigation of his staff. Chief Quinlan has been a police officer for most of his life. His allegiance will always be to his fellow police officers. We cannot ask police officers to refer themselves for investigation. They will always protect each other. That is why our demands start at defund and not reform. We know internal investigations don't work. Officers in the past who have been investigated end up back working in the very communities they have been accused of using excessive force in. We know civilian review boards don't work because they can only offer their recommendations after something has already gone terribly wrong. We know body cameras don't work because footage mysteriously disappears or it is mistakenly never turned on, like in the case of 15-year-old Abdurrahman Salad, Allah Nahristos, may God rest his soul, who was shot by Columbus police back in January, where till this day, no footage has been produced, even at the request of the family. Simply put, we know reform does not work. We are way past reform. The people demand the Columbus police be defunded and that money be invested into the Black people of Columbus. Redirect your energy in reimagining community and not public safety. When 30 of the last 37 council members were appointed and not elected, it begs the question of who are they accountable to? I want people listening today to really hear that part. If this council, as is, isn't accountable to us, then we must work to make that a reality. Our city needs real work. Maybe we should start at how city council functions. I yield my time.
Thank you, Ms. Farrow, for your comments. Also, we have Ron Roberts. Let me remind you that you have 3 minutes, and please state your name and any organization which you're associated with.
I do not see anyone by the name of Roberts, sir.
Mr. Roberts is in person.
In person, thank you.
Mr. Roberts, welcome to council.
I'm sorry.
Welcome to council. You can come to the.
I'd like to submit this when we're done.
Of course.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, you have, if you would give your name and any organization that you may represent, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. My name is Ron Roberts, and I had the privilege to protect and serve the citizens of Columbus as a sergeant for what was and continues to be one of the finest police departments in this country. For the last 13 years of my 26-year career, I was in the homicide squad and team leader for the hostage negotiator team. I want to speak with you today concerning the Columbus Division of Police Critical Incident Response Team and your efforts to eliminate their ability to investigate CPD, police-involved shootings, and other critical incidents. Critical Incident Response Team was formed in 1994. The Columbus CERT is the most experienced police-involved shooting team in the state of Ohio and enjoys an impeccable reputation, even nationally. Each year, local, state, and federal agencies request that CERT conduct police-involved shooting investigations for their agencies. All over the United States, agencies have contacted the Columbus CERT to learn about how their excellent system works. Even the Attorney General's Office, Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy, turned to the Columbus CERT to teach their best practices in officer-involved shootings class. CERT's inception was born when Chief Jackson approved the creation of the team to assure that experienced detectives were assigned to police-involved incidents. Commitments were made that thorough and detailed investigations would be completed within 45 days of the incident. Integrity was never a question, as CERT only gathers objective details and facts. CERT interviews witnesses, collects evidence, and reports that information to other authorities. CERT makes no decisions or recommendations. The final decision maker on criminal charges is the grand jury, not CERT, not CPD. The CPD Firearms Review Board makes decisions regarding any departmental changes. If in your minds results matter, know that by implementing CERT, lawsuits to the city of Columbus were drastically reduced. If facts matter, the integrity of these investigations were never in question, even after being highly scrutinized by higher authorities. If facts matter, the perspective that there was not justice was not because there was a lack of integrity with these investigations, but based on the fact the shootings were found to be lawful. You may be thinking, but there are people who say they don't trust the Columbus Police CERT to conduct investigations of their own officers, that they are somehow biased or covering for these officers. Yet with 26 years of investigations, most of which are public records, not one investigation has been shown to bear out any of these accusations as being true. And as you know, CERT simply does the investigations. Prosecutor's office and grand jury determines whether charges should be filed. There's no reason to reassign these investigations from our most qualified, well-equipped, and experienced investigators. CERT is not a rubber stamp team. Cases are submitted in a CPD chain of command in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. As a result of the CERT investigation, some officers were administratively reprimanded, some were terminated, and some Mayor Ginther and council members want to temporarily give the Ohio Bureau of Investigation, BCI, the responsibility of conducting these investigations. The word temporarily is used because it has now become clear that city council members want to ultimately give a non-police investigative group and responsibility to investigate CPD police-involved shootings. They want to give these investigations to a non-police investigative group. Perhaps as a compromise, allow BCI to investigate the fatals. Perhaps as a compromise, allow BCI to investigate the fatals and allow CERT to continue non-fatal investigations. And then after 12 to 18 months, conduct a mandatory evaluation process of both teams' results. So let me summarize my key points. CERT enjoys an impeccable reputation nationally and has been a model for integrity. CERT has high standards that have been copied by numerous law enforcement agencies across the country. CERT provides objective and factual information, making no case decisions or recommendations. BCI has excellent personnel, but could never handle the caseload that CERT currently supports. Despite all of these points, not a single committee or single council member has contacted any member of CERT to ask for their input. The system isn't broken. If you pass this amendment, you are basing it on the clamoring of individuals who do not have the best interest of the city of Columbus or its citizens as part of their agenda. These individuals will never be satisfied no matter who conducts these investigations unless an officer is indicted as a result. Do not confuse justice with legality. I want to finally thank all the personnel from the finest police department in the country. We appreciate your continued commitment and dedication to protecting the citizens of Columbus during these troubled times. For Mayor Ginther and our city council, please keep in mind we should all seek justice. However, during these highly emotional times, what appears to be justice will be different depending on where you stand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, you did go over about 2 minutes. And so, but thank you. Would you please submit your testimony for the record so that we can follow up?
I don't think he can hear you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't hear you.
Council President, thank you. We do have one more speaker for this evening on the subject matter.
Yes, he's in the room as well.
Mr. James McCloskey.
Call him Mr. James McCoskey. You'll submit it. Thank you, Officer McCoskey. Officer McCoskey and Officer Roberts, or Sergeant Roberts, did a joint statement. So that was the statement that Sergeant Roberts read. So that will be submitted to the record.
Thank you, Council President. With that, are there any comments from my council colleagues? Seeing and hearing none, I think it's important, Council President, and for my council colleagues to understand that this particular piece of legislation is not an indictment with regards to the CERT team that currently exists. It is to address the issue of independent investigations, and at the request of the mayor with regards to a executive order, I move for passage of this legislation.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, council member and chair. I will read the last ordinance and turn it over to the city attorney for further information. I have 1626-2020 to find not sufficient a petition for a proposed amendment to the charter of the city of Columbus titled to establish a community bill of rights for water, air, and soil protection, and to prohibit fossil fuel extraction and related activities and projects, and to declare an emergency. On June 29th, 2019, residents of the city of Columbus filed a pre-circulation copy of a petition for proposed amendment to the charter of the city of Columbus. On June 18th, 2020, petitioners filed with the city clerk a petition for said amendment. Petitioners filed 257 parched petitions containing 8,991 signatures. On June 30th, 2020, the Franklin County Board of Elections certified its examination of the part petitions as required by Section 42.9 of the city charter. The Board of Elections found that the total number of valid signatures failed to achieve the standards as defined in Section 45 of the charter, which requires not less than 10% of the vote total cast in at least the last preceding municipal election. Having not met that signature threshold, this council finds that the petitions for an initiated charter amendment is not sufficient and shall not be placed on the ballot. Because these standards are based on the charter, the city's constitution, council cannot issue an extension or change the number of signatures necessary. That being said, I see the Community Bill of Rights team at community events all over town. These folks are working extremely hard for what they believe in. Each one of my members of council have met numerous times and engaged with all of the groups, and we will continue to do so. I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney's office for further comment.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Actually, you stated it very succinctly. There were not a sufficient number of signatures to require that the particular petition be placed upon the ballot, and therefore it is not sufficient pursuant to Columbus City Charter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Attorney's Office. We have two, Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. I'd like to thank all the members of the Community Bill of Rights for their hard work and advocacy for our environment. We know the importance of their work and certainly the principles within this particular bill that they put forth. As I've done in the past in meeting with them, I have offered to work on particular pieces of this of their proposal, and that stands true to this day. And so look forward to the opportunity to reach out and work on those things that council can enact that might have an effect on our great city and to protect our great city's water and environment. So thanks again. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have two speakers on this ordinance via WebEx. The first is Krista Quick.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Ms. Quick.
Okay, thank you.
Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Krista Quick. I do not represent any organizations, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak before the council. Respecting the water, air, and soil that we live on is vital to supporting justice and equity for all. There is no public safety or community without the health of natural resources that we need to live and thrive. Our local community, our local economy and communities depend on it. The people who live here should have a voice in protecting their water supply and environment from toxic waste. We know from events in our country that threats to our water supply are real and can be devastating and difficult to fix. We need to do all that we can do to avoid such a crisis. Currently, other Ohio municipalities have passed their own Community Bill of Rights, and I believe that if it had not been for the COVID-19 pandemic, this petition would have collected enough signatures from the community. I respectfully request the City Council to amend the charter themselves or to allow an extension. I appreciate all the work that you all do with the Community Bill of Rights, and I want to thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Ms. Quick, for your comments, and they are noted. We were not able to do the extension based off of the charter, but we appreciate your comments, and they are noted. The final speaker to come before council is via WebEx, and that's Ms. Anissa Awad.
Council, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just a reminder, 3 minutes.
Of course, yeah. I just want to touch on a couple bases. They're really just questions for you guys to respond to in relation to the charter. I was wondering, first off, if it is because of the charter that you can't allow more time, is it possible for you guys to amend that part of the charter to allow them more time? And then also, if you guys are committed to, and I know you have been, to the Community Bill of Rights, like what you guys were hoping to do now until even November or in the future with creating a Community Bill of Rights for protecting the water, air, and soil of our community. And also just generally, if you are allowed to talk about previous ordinances, because it wasn't touched on, if you could explain to me and others listening about 1656, about if it is mandatory for there to be a referral from the police chief to BCI, or if it can just be another one. If that's not something you're allowed to speak on right now, that is okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Awad. I'm going to actually ask Solicitor General Morris to respond to the charter question. I will say quickly that, like I said before, every member of this council, I think, has met with the Community Bill of Rights folks and have committed to engaging on different levels. I know that the Department of Utilities has engaged. There were very specific questions about what is in our watershed that we got answers to. I think even several members of this council went up 40 miles outside of the city with the Bill of Rights to have the conversation in person. And so it's not just lip service. We really do appreciate the work that they're doing. There was legally insufficient issues with this petition. But I would turn it over to the Solicitor General to add any additional information.
Thank you, Council President Harden. So the city charter is roughly equivalent to the U.S. Constitution in the sense that the legislative body can propose amendments to the charter, just like Congress could propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution. But ultimately, those amendments cannot be voted on by the legislative body alone. They would have to be enacted by the people and be subject to a vote. So even if council were to seek to amend the charter, council would have to first vote to do so, then place it for a vote, then the vote would have to pass. Unfortunately, even if all of that were to occur, it would not be able to fix this particular situation because this petition was filed prior to any of those amendments happening. So the charter requires that the petition signatures be gathered within a very specific period of time. The city council does not have the authority to override what's currently in the charter as relates to that petition that was filed under the charter as it's stated. And if there were to be a change in the future, the council could place it on the ballot, but council could not itself amend the charter.
Thank you, Solicitor General. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage. Is there a second? Please call the roll.
Second.
Brown, Dorans, Favorini, Tyson, President Harden.
Right, it is passed. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope everyone has a safe week. And remember to mask up for Columbus and to keep safe. Thank you.